You can't change the past, right? All you can do is change the way you react to that situation in the future, the way you think about a certain situation in the future. Those are the only things that you can control, right? We talk about that as well, right? What are the things that I have direct control over?
Welcome to Grit Meets Growth, the podcast where we explore getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. Now let's get after it.
I'm super excited about the fact that we've got almost 240 downloads over 4 episodes. That just floors me, man. And, you know, I know by standards, that's really not a lot, but it's exciting as heck.
Oh my gosh.
And the fact that, you know, as we talked about, right, I'm just so thankful that some of the messages of people getting benefit from the things that we're saying, the things that we're posting. Like, that just means so much to me.
I totally agree. I would do this for 5 people, right? Or 1 person.
I mean, the reality is we're all on a journey. We're all on our own journey, but it sure is nice when people are saying the same things and saying things that resonate with you. You know, whether you're out on Instagram or whether you're listening to a podcast, you know, it really, I know for me, when I come across those things, it is that fuel that keeps me going. It's the fuel that keeps me going in reaching my goals. It's the fuel that keeps me going and helping others to achieve their goals.
It makes you feel normal when you hear people talking about the same challenges, same kinds of challenges you're going through. When you hear people talking about pushing through those challenges, it's motivating and it inspires you to keep working hard. It's good. And I think that's the biggest message is, like, for anybody that's listening to the podcast, all the stuff you're going through on your journey is normal. Like, it's the same stuff that you and I are going through, that everybody else that listens to the podcast is going through. We all, like you said, we all have our unique journey, but the reality of it is the challenges are very similar. And so if we can help each other, that's a win. You had sent me an email earlier this week, and it was interesting because it talked about along the lines of choosing the right people, being willing to have difficult conversations when it's time. I think the intro to it was, have you ever avoided a difficult conversation with somebody you care about because you didn't want to feel uncomfortable? And I chuckled when I read that because, you know, living in a blended family, there are definitely moments where there are uncomfortable conversations that have to be had on a regular basis, with whether it's with Christina, my wife, or the kids, or whatever that looks like, or if it's at work. There are difficult conversations around every corner. And the thing I've learned over time is it's really easy to brush those under the rug and not have those difficult conversations, right? The problem with that is you brush enough of them under the rug and all of a sudden your rug has a big pile under it. And you pull up the rug one day and there's no room for any more stuff because you've filled it up. The message that you sent me was just a good reminder to, hey, have some of those difficult conversations, get a little bit vulnerable. You said something in that email. You don't have to be comfortable having the difficult conversations. It's okay to be uncomfortable with them, but that's not an excuse not to have them. And so I appreciated you sending that. The timing of it was really good. And it got my wheels turning a little bit about what that looks like in life and how important that is.
Yeah. And not only in family, but
right.
in business as well, right? Whether it's, you know, with your business partners or with your boss, you know, in a corporate environment or whatever that happens to be, having, you know, as you mentioned, you keep sweeping that stuff under the rug, it builds up. And then all of a sudden like the balloon bursts, and it's just not good, right? And it's not good for the relationship. It's not good for us personally, in our careers. Get uncomfortable having that dialogue. It will set you. It has set me apart, right? In my career, whether it's with clients, whether it's with your boss, whatever it happens to be. Don't be afraid of those difficult conversations. You strengthen and build that. I mean, I go back early in my career and had a client that I was calling on, and he liked to really push buttons. And he and I went toe to toe one day and had that difficult conversation. Ended up being one of my best clients ever, long-term clients. Like, that was 20 years ago, and I still talk to the guy.
The one reminder that you dropped on me as well is, just because you're having those difficult conversations doesn't mean there's anything wrong. They're normal. They're like, not having difficult conversations should be less normal than just diving into them and getting vulnerable and digging into the stuff that you need to dig into in order to grow, in order to have healthy relationships, in order to build the things that you're trying to build.
I kind of look at difficult conversations with folks as a sign of respect, right? If we respect somebody enough to have that difficult conversation, and bring it up and discuss those things, that's for me a sign of respect. And I think I've had that echoed back to me from those conversations historically as well.
But I think too, to be able to jump into those difficult conversations with respect as your go-to, I'm not going to hammer somebody with, hey, here's all the things that are wrong, but I want to have a conversation where we're on equal footing. We can dig into what we need to dig into, but the respect part doesn't get lost in that.
Yeah. And I think in those conversations, you have to be willing to listen, right? It's not only about you pushing your thoughts out and having that difficult conversation, but it's also being on the receiving end and listening to it with that same respect.
Listening is a challenging subject though, too. Like, I've done a bit of research into kind of the art of active listening. And partially because I caught myself over and over again. People would be talking to me, they'd be sharing something with me. And instead of really listening, there were a lot of times where I was thinking ahead to, oh, when they're done, I'm going to say this. And I've been able to train myself to get less excited about what I have to say and what I have to share, and more excited about hearing them and what they have to share. And it's actually over time become a bit of a superpower when I'm working with clients, because I can ask really good questions. I've figured out how to be super curious in my work, and I figured out how to ask really good questions. And then the biggest key is I figured out how to shut up and listen, let them talk, and capture what they're sharing and what they're saying. There's so many gold nuggets that lie in that. If you can keep your mouth shut and just hear people, and they feel good about it too at the end of the day. So
what's the old saying? God gave us 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Use them proportionally.
Absolutely, man.
It's difficult in practice, right? It's super difficult. And, to add on to your point too, like, get comfortable with silence. Silence is okay. We as humans want to fill that time. We want to fill that space. Sometimes people just need to think about what was asked or what was said, and give them that opportunity, give that point of silence.
It's interesting that you bring up the topic of silence. We just spent 5 days up north on the Canadian border, and part of that was me spending a day fishing. And what I realized is I have a hard time getting quiet. It takes me a while to come down off of work and slow down to where I can really get myself quiet. But as I was sitting there fishing, my head got clear, and I saw a lot of things more clearly than I had in a long time, because I let the noise drop I let myself get quiet. I let myself get a little bit uncomfortable, which is what we talk about all the time. When I did that, I could start to hear things and see things with a new level of clarity that I hadn't seen and felt in a long time. And coming back from that trip, I felt like I was recharged and just had a new vision for what I want and where I'm going.
Do you take an opportunity to kind of do that every day in your daily life?
I try to. I try to start my day with some quiet in the morning, some quiet time. For me, that can be a little bit of time praying in the Bible, whatever my day starts like. I try to do that on a regular basis. The thing I've realized is the days when I do that and I start with that quiet time, I feel a lot more in control of my day. Like my head's in the right place. I roll into things with a different demeanor than the days where I wake up, roll out of bed, and just dive right into the day. That's become very clear to me that if I take that time and invest that time to get quiet, there's a lot more clarity in my day.
Yeah, and I find myself really utilizing that for absolute silence. Like it is just, sometimes it's sitting in the dark, sometimes it's sitting on the deck and listening to the birds. But it is just that quiet time in the morning just to kind of reflect on what has happened, where am I going, where am I being guided today, right? I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And, it has been proven in I've when you introspectively look at things, you see those trigger points every day, all day. And it just puts a smile on my face, just even thinking about them and thinking about that quiet time. It doesn't have to be long. Like sometimes for me, it's only like 3, 4, 5 minutes at the most, right? Before you get the day started.
The interesting thing, let me ask you this. Are you a person who grabs their phone first thing in the morning?
I used to be. I really try not to. I really do try not to. There is one piece of information. It's typically a post from the gym that I go to, from the gym owner. And I'd like to see that post every morning. He usually posts it between 3 and 4 a.m. So by the time I get up at 5, it's posted. And that kind of sets me for my day. But that's the only thing. I don't get into any other social media. I don't even scroll through the feed. That's in his story on Instagram. I pop it up. I look at it. Sets my course for the day. And that happens after I kind of take that quiet time.
Yeah. My reason for asking, I kind of figured you were going to say that. I'm in a similar boat. I used to, before I'd even get out of bed, I'd reach over next to me on the nightstand, grab the phone, and I would spend half an hour scrolling, going through messages and getting into all the chaos of the day. And then I would try to get quiet after that. And it was almost impossible. Like once you start that wheel spinning, it's hard to stop. But I got myself into the habit of not going there first. And one of the things that's funny about that is it reminded me of when I was in college. I'd grab a cigarette while I was still in bed and I'd smoke my first cigarette before I even got out of bed. And there's all these like addictions that we have. And I've had tons of them, that if we can curb the addiction and change our habits, we can set completely different trajectories for our day. So.
Agreed 100%. Right. It's that, for me, it's the quiet time. It's that reflection. It's the motivational quote, which usually is right about where my head's at from a reflection perspective, quiet time anyway. So it really speaks to that. And then it's the ignition switch for the gym for me. And that starts that trajectory of the day for me. What about you?
I'm in the same boat. One of the other things I include in mine is I've got my goals written down. So I spend just a minute every morning glancing at my goals. and refreshing in my head, okay, here's what we're working toward. And some of them are numbers driven, some of them aren't, but getting back every day to the goals. I think one of the things that happens is we set goals and then we don't revisit them often enough. And maybe we revisit them once a month, or maybe once every 3 months, maybe once a year, depending. And then we wonder why we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. Where to be able to take every morning and do that reset and say, okay, this is what I'm working toward. This is what matters to me. And this is what I'm going after. It has been really powerful. And it does. It sets the tone for the day.
How do you go about when you're goal setting? Are you setting short-term goals, long-term goals? How do you go about setting that?
One of the things that we learned about 5 years ago in our business is we set our annual goal, whatever those are. But then we break them into quarterly chunks, and we say, okay, for the next 90 days, here's what we're going to work on. And that's one of the things that we learned through a really good coach that we have. That's one of the things to say to that is investing in a really good coach has been a dynamite decision and well worth its while. But to approach things in 90-day chunks, it's much easier for 90 days to sprint toward a destination than it is to take that marathon run for a year toward a goal and say, this is what we're going to work on for an entire year. So that's been big. And then we do actually business-wise, every Monday morning, we have a conversation about, okay, here's what our quarterly goals are. What kind of progress did we make? And have we gotten any closer? If we haven't gotten any closer, what's in the way? What kind of barriers do we need to destroy to get to where we want to go? And what I found is I can take that exact same approach personally outside of my business, but my goals with my family, my kids, my wife, I can set goals for those areas as well and take a similar approach to that. And it works pretty good.
When you say that focus on things, John, do you find that what is that percentage of achieving those goals look like? I mean, 100% is really unattainable. To achieve 100% of those goals, where do you end up falling with that kind of focus?
I would say, just to put a number to it, 75 to 80, a lot closer than I would get if I didn't revisit the goals. I've had times where I put Post-it notes up on the mirror, or I've got Post-it notes up right behind my desk here, where those goals are visible to me all day long. And so the visibility, I think, is key. If your goals are visible where you can see them, you are going to be reminded of them on a regular basis, and you're going to be driven to chase them a little bit harder.
And I'm not saying that we don't ever achieve our, right? I'm not saying that 100% is unattainable forever. What I've found is that sometimes we set those goals with an unrealistic time frame to them.
Absolutely.
Right. And there are goals that we achieve faster, and there are goals that take longer than what we had originally anticipated. Right. But I think, as you mentioned, right, having that focus, looking at what are those things that are impeding me from getting there. And so often they're just little things, but you have to discuss them. You have to talk about them. You have to figure out how can we remove that barrier? Sometimes it's tiny, right? It's just a little tweak to whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. How about you on the goal side? Do you have any tricks that you use?
I've had very similar coaching in business, to what you have, and kind of that same approach, right? Set those big, hairy, audacious goals out there, that you're going to achieve. Start to break down things into a quarterly fashion, weekly fashion, right? It's kind of that old adage of, putting the golf balls in before the rocks, before the sand. Right? If I put all the sand in first, I don't have room for the golf balls or the bigger rocks. So making sure that you've got your priorities straight from that perspective, and then managing to them. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Right? It's a work in progress, and every single day.
That what you just said there is important. Am I perfect? No, I'm a work in progress. I think we've talked a little bit about this in the past. Comparison puts us in a position where we don't feel comfortable being a work in progress. We think we have to be perfect, especially on social media right now. We see perfect all the time. People post perfect, which puts us all in a position where we're comparing and going, well, I'm not there yet, so I'm not good enough. And that comparison is just a killer. I have that conversation with my kids, but I have to have that same conversation with myself. I'm building something. I'm on a journey. It's a process. I'm not there yet, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles we have in our current society, right? Is that view of of comparing, right? Of comparing to others and always looking at what are others doing. And, there may be folks out there that don't have, that feel they don't have confidence because of that, right? Their confidence level goes down. And I think that confidence comes from not being better than others. It's not about that focus, right? Confidence is about understanding ourselves. Confidence is understanding what are our unique qualities that we bring to the table. And our belief that they matter. Right? If I can understand what my unique qualities are, what I bring to the table, and I can actually believe that they matter to not only my life, but to others. And then I always take that focus of helping others, then man, my confidence is going to be high, regardless. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in better together, whether it's business related or in life, right? It's that others' thoughts, others' process coming all together for the greater good, right?
That's spot on though, because Jesse Itzler posted something about that this morning, where it was basically, I don't want to always partner with people who think exactly the way I do. I want to partner with people who are going to challenge my thinking, who are going to push me to think differently. I mean, there's obviously some non-negotiables where this is not something you're going to get me to think differently about. I'm like firm in this, but there's a lot of things. Having that outside perspective that's a little bit different than yours is so valuable. It helps you see things through a different lens, step into each other's shoes, and just approach the world, I think, a lot of times in a better way.
Yeah, as humans, that's a tough thing to do, right? Sometimes just to step out of our own minds and into somebody else's perspective. As humans, we have a tendency to be very judgmental. It's always easy to sit on the sidelines and look at somebody's decisions and go, man, can't believe they did that. That's crazy. Sitting on the sidelines, it's easy to do that, right? Being in the trenches, being in the situation is tough. It's tough no matter who it is, right? And having that compassion to be able to recognize that of people and stop being so judgmental. And I say that for myself because I have a tendency to do that sometimes.
But compassion is one of those words, though, too. When you hear it, it sounds like a very soft word and squishy and whatever. But the reality of it is, there is so much power in bringing compassion to the table. And realistically, the strongest people I know are also the ones that bring the most compassion to life. I think one of the last things to tap into for today was an interesting conversation I had this morning. Somebody brought up the idea of, where's our head at when we wake up in the morning? Do we wake up thinking about things that are past or our future? And this goes back to our goal setting. It goes back to, are we tapping into our phone right away? But when you wake up in the morning, where's your head at? Are you diving into the past and all the things that went wrong and all the things that didn't work in your favor and all the things that didn't go your way? Or are you thinking about all the possibilities that are in front of you that day, next month, this coming year? Future focused or past focused? And it was a good reminder for me this morning. Be careful where my head goes when my feet hit the floor.
Do you struggle with that ever?
Sometimes. Yeah, I think I think on some level we all do. Everybody does. No matter how intentional you are to be future focused, there are always those moments where your head slides backward and you start thinking about the past. And, like we said, we all have challenges, we all have struggles. It would be really easy to think about our past challenges and struggles and use those as an excuse for why we can't get to where we want to go today. And I think they're not excuses, they're building blocks. You learn a lot of lessons going through the struggles and the challenges, and that's what makes them valuable. But you can't lean backward into those things and go forward at the same time.
You can't change the past, right? All you can do is change the way you react to that situation in the future, the way you think about a certain situation in the future. Those are the only things that you can control, right? We talk about that as well, right? What are the things that I have direct control over? Those are the things that I should be thinking about, that I should look for, that I should set my mindset right with, right? What are the things that I can change? And guess what? Those situations are going to leave you a little more vulnerable and a little more honest with yourself and with others around you, which comes back to that same conversation, right? About having the difficult conversations. Those difficult conversations may be with yourself. Get vulnerable, get honest, and make it a great day.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Grit Meets Growth. We have 2 asks for you as we wrap things up today. First of all, if you enjoyed this podcast or you got something out of it today, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow us so that you can get your ear in on more of these conversations. And the second thing we'd love to have you do is if you heard something today that you think could help somebody else or that they need to hear, we just ask you to share the podcast and let this message be magnetic to as many people as possible. So with that, have an awesome day. Make it happen. Get out there, do the work, and let's get after it.